workers are standing in food bank lines because they missed one paycheck. One. And before you think that could never be you, let me tell you something. You're one paycheck away from being right there with them. You see those images? Federal employees, people with good government jobs, college degrees, careers they've worked years to build, standing in line at food banks because the government shut down and they didn't get paid. And I'm watching people act shocked, like this is some kind of anomaly, like this is unusual, like this couldn't happen to them. Let me tell you something that Black America has known forever. Most of you are one missed paycheck away from complete disaster. You just didn't know it until now. These federal workers aren't lazy. They're not irresponsible. They're not living beyond their means. They have jobs, real jobs, jobs with benefits and retirement plans, and everything America tells you means you've made it. And one missed paycheck put them in a food bank line. One, not 6 months of missed paychecks, not a year. One single paycheck, and suddenly they can't feed their families. That should terrify you. That should shake you to your core, because if it can happen to them, it can happen to you. And for most Americans, it will. The statistics don't lie, even though we'd like to pretend they do. 78% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. That's not poor people. That's not minimum wage workers. That's everybody. That's people making $50,000 a year, $75,000 a year, six figures in some cases. They're all one paycheck away from catastrophe. They can't cover a $500 emergency without going into debt. They have no savings, no cushion, no safety net, nothing. And we've built an entire society that pretends this is normal. We've normalized financial precarity to the point where people making decent money can't miss a single paycheck without losing everything. And we act like that's just how it is. That's not how it has to be. That's how we've chosen to make it. This country has priorities, and taking care of its citizens has never been one of them. You want to know what America's priorities are? Look at the budget. We spend over $800 billion a year on the military. $800 billion. We're funding wars in multiple countries. We're maintaining military bases all over the world. We're building weapon systems that cost more than most nations' entire GDP. We can always find money for war. Always. The defense budget never gets cut. There's always money for another aircraft carrier, another fighter jet, another missile system. But when it comes to making sure federal workers get paid on time, when it comes to making sure Americans can afford healthcare, childcare, education, when it comes to raising the minimum wage so people can actually live on what they earn, suddenly we're broke. Suddenly we can't afford it. Suddenly we have to worry about the deficit and fiscal responsibility. It's a lie. It's always been a lie. We have the money. We're the richest country in the history of the world. We just choose to spend it on bombs instead of people. And don't even get me started on corporations. We give billions of dollars in subsidies and tax breaks to corporations that are already making record profits. We bail out banks and airlines and car companies when they fail. But when regular people need help, we tell them to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. We let Amazon pay $0 in federal taxes while their workers are on food stamps. We let Walmart underpay employees so badly that taxpayers have to subsidize their workforce with government assistance. We prioritize corporate profits over human survival, and then we wonder why people are struggling. Here's the part that really gets me. Black America has been trying to tell you about this for decades. We've been living one paycheck away from disaster our entire existence in this country. We've been warning you that this economic system is designed to keep working people poor and desperate. We've been fighting for living wages, for workers' rights, for economic justice, for a safety net that actually catches people when they fall. And white America ignored us. They ignored us because they thought it was just a black problem. They thought if they worked hard and played by the rules, they'd be fine. They thought the system was fair, that it rewarded merit, that anyone who struggled just wasn't trying hard enough. They bought into the myth of the American dream so completely that they couldn't see the nightmare unfolding around them. And they didn't listen to us because of anti-black racism. Plain and simple. When black people talk about economic inequality, about exploitation, about how the system is rigged against working people, white America tunes out. They assume we're exaggerating, that we're playing the victim, that we're looking for handouts. They can't imagine that we might actually understand how this country works better than they do because we've never had the luxury of believing in the illusion. We've been living in reality while they've been living in a fantasy, and now the fantasy is crumbling and they're shocked to discover that they're just as vulnerable as we've always been. The chickens have come home to roost. That's what Malcolm X said. And he was right then and he's right now. You can't build a society on exploitation and inequality and expect it to only hurt certain people. Eventually the poison spreads. Eventually everyone gets sick. White America spent centuries building an economic system designed to extract wealth from black people, and now that same system is extracting wealth from them too. They created a monster, and now they're surprised that the monster is eating them. If they had listened to Black America, we wouldn't be here. If they had supported living wages when we fought for them, federal workers wouldn't be in food bank lines. If they had supported universal health care when we advocated for it, people wouldn't be going bankrupt from medical bills. If they had supported strong unions when we organized them, workers would have the power to demand better pay and benefits. If they had supported a robust social safety net when we pushed for it, missing one paycheck wouldn't mean disaster. But they didn't listen. They fought against every single thing that would have made life better for working people because they were convinced that helping Black people was the worst thing that could happen to them. They would rather suffer themselves than see us benefit, and now they're suffering, and they still can't quite bring themselves to admit that we were right all along. Let me paint you a picture of what listening to Black America would have looked like. Imagine a country where the minimum wage kept pace with productivity and inflation, where a full-time job paid enough to live on, where healthcare was a right, not a privilege, where childcare was affordable and accessible, where education was free or cheap enough that students didn't graduate with crushing debt, where workers had strong unions to advocate for them, where the social safety net was strong enough that missing one paycheck didn't mean eviction and hunger. That's what we've been fighting for. That's what we've been organizing for, marching for, voting for, demanding for generations. And white America said no. They said it was socialism. They said it was welfare. They said it was giving handouts to people who didn't deserve them. They said it would bankrupt the country. They said all kinds of things to avoid admitting the real reason they opposed it. They didn't want Black people to have it. And now, here we are. Federal workers in food bank lines, 78% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck, millions of people one emergency away from homelessness, a country that's supposedly the richest in the world where working people can't afford to live. This is what happens when you ignore Black America's warnings. This is what happens when you let racism override common sense. This is what happens when you prioritize corporations and war over human beings. The tragedy is that it didn't have to be this way. We told you. We told you over and over again. We told you that an economy built on exploitation would eventually collapse. We told you that you can't keep wages stagnant while costs skyrocket and expect people to survive. We told you that prioritizing profits over people would lead to disaster. We told you that weakening unions and gutting the social safety net would hurt everyone. We told you. And you didn't listen because we're Black. That's the real tragedy here. Not that the system is broken. We've been telling you it's broken. The tragedy is that racism was more important to white America than their own economic survival. They would rather be one paycheck away from disaster than listen to Black people about how to build a better society. So now what? Now that white America is experiencing what we've been living through forever, what happens next? Do they finally listen? Do they finally understand that we've been fighting for everyone, not just ourselves? Do they finally realize that economic justice benefits all working people regardless of race? I want to believe they will, but history suggests otherwise. Because here's what usually happens. White America experiences a crisis, demands immediate relief, gets some kind of assistance or reform, and then goes right back to opposing those same programs when they think Black people might benefit from them. They'll fight for unemployment benefits when they need them and then vote to cut them once they're back on their feet because they don't want their tax dollars helping those people. They'll demand government assistance during a shutdown and then complain about welfare queens the moment the crisis passes. But maybe this time will be different. Maybe this time enough people will realize that we're all in this together. Maybe this time they'll understand that when we fight for economic justice, we're fighting for them too. Maybe this time they'll listen when Black America talks about what needs to change, because we know what needs to change. We've always known we need living wages that actually allow people to live. We need universal health care so that getting sick doesn't mean going broke. We need affordable housing so that people aren't spending half their income on rent. We need free or affordable education so that opportunity isn't reserved for the wealthy. We need strong unions so that workers have power to negotiate fair treatment. We need a robust social safety net so that missing one paycheck doesn't mean choosing between food and rent. We need to stop spending $800 billion a year on war and start investing in people. We need to stop giving tax breaks to billionaires and corporations and start funding programs that actually help working families. We need to prioritize human beings over profits, communities over corporations, survival over shareholder value. This is what Black America has been fighting for. This is what we've been advocating for through every movement, every protest, every campaign. When we march for justice, we're marching for economic justice too. When we organize, we're organizing for better wages, better benefits, better working conditions for everyone. When we vote, we're voting for policies that lift all working people, not just Black people. And maybe now, with federal workers standing in food bank lines, with 78% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck, with the reality of economic precarity hitting everyone regardless of race, maybe now people will listen. Maybe now they'll understand that we weren't exaggerating. We weren't playing victim. We weren't asking for handouts. We were telling the truth about how this system works and warning about where it was headed. We were the canaries in the coal mine, and instead of listening to us, people kept digging deeper. Well, now everyone's in the mine and the air is running out, and the same people who have been fighting for breathable air all along are still here, still fighting, still trying to save everyone, including the people who refuse to listen. That's what Black America does. We fight for justice even when it's ignored. We advocate for change even when it's resisted. We push for a better world even when we're told we're asking for too much. We do this because we know that a rising tide lifts all boats. We know that economic justice benefits everyone. We know that you can't have a healthy society when most of its people are struggling to survive. So here's my message to America. Listen to Black people. When we tell you the system is broken, believe us. When we tell you that workers need more power and better pay, support us. When we fight for policies that provide security and stability for working families, join us. When we organize and protest and demand change, don't dismiss us as troublemakers or complainers. Recognize that we're trying to save this country from itself, because those federal workers in food bank lines, that's just the beginning. That's just a preview of what happens when a society prioritizes war and corporate profits over human beings. That's what happens when you ignore the warnings of people who have been living on the edge of disaster their entire lives. The question is, will you listen now, or will you wait until things get even worse? Because they will get worse if nothing changes. More people will end up in food bank lines. More families will lose their homes. More workers will realize they're one paycheck away from catastrophe. Or we could listen to Black America, finally, and build the kind of economy that works for everyone. The choice has always been there. The question is whether America is finally ready to make it.